yesterday with graphs on it. The question is, what are the equations for those lines that we graphed? That's the gist of today's lesson. So your answer should be an equation. Okay, I have the worksheet right here. I'll pass it out to you in a second. Yesterday your answer was a graph. Today's your answer is an equation. All right. So we're going to look at 4 examples. We're going to try to cover everything you'll see on the worksheet or a quiz. Here's your first example. I'll give you plenty of time to write it down. Write an equation for the line that passes through the point 0,5 and has a slope of 0. I'm going to go ahead and pass the worksheets out because you're going to see it's the same thing. Okay. But by the way, I should have said this somewhere up here. This is going to be in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b, basically. We haven't talked about point-slope form yet. All right, first step's easiest. It says label the point and the slope. So first of all, we're going to rewrite the point that he gave us. That's real easy. So the point is 0, 5. All right, in terms of x and y is how we're going to label this. So which one's x and which one's y? Good. The first value is x, 0. The second value is y. Okay. And then the slope, what letter do we normally use for slope? Does anybody remember? Huh? I heard the right answer. M. Good. So they said the slope was 0. I'm just going to label that. I'm just going to say that's m. You can write m equals 0. That's fine too. All right, and then you can just write this equation once at the top of your worksheet. Next step says to write the line equation. I don't 5, I think. What's the equation for a line? Who can tell me? Y equals something. Thank you. Y equals mx plus b. Okay. Never ceases to amaze me every day. It's like you have these steps that are so easy, and then a student will say, well, I'm confused. I don't see how you can be, honestly, with certain things. I just don't understand that. I think it's just a cop-out for some people that don't want to do their work. But anyways, certainly if you want me to explain this again to you, I can explain why it's y equals mx plus b. We'll spend a lesson on figuring out why that's the equation. All right, so the next step is simple too. You're just going to plug in, let's see here. You're going to plug in the values up here, okay? So since there's a y there and we said y was 5, I'm going to replace it with 5. Okay, since there is a x is 0, well, let's go ahead and plug in m. M is also 0, okay? That normally doesn't happen, but I'll plug in a 0 for m, put it in parentheses. I'm going to plug in a 0 for x, put that in parentheses, and then it's going to be plus b. So those are your first 3 steps, real easy. You always label the point the same, x and y. You always label the slope m, and you plug it into the same formula for every single one of these. Okay? Now we're going to solve for b. This one is really easy, this example, because what's 0 times 0? 0 times 0 is 0, plus b is b, right? Basically, this just becomes b, because it's 0 plus b. So that solves step 4. Okay? You're always going to be solving for b in these, okay? Well, not always, most of the time. We're going to look at some exceptions, but usually going to be solving for b. There is one exception. But now, okay, you're going to rewrite your equation, and I'll just write it out again. You don't have to do this, but just for the sake of understanding, you're writing y equals mx plus b. The only thing that you're plugging in is your m and your b. Okay? So what was m? M they already gave you. 0, okay? So I'm going to plug in a 0 for x. What was your b? We solved for that one. That one's 5. Let's say for that final step and simplify. Okay? How can we simplify y equals 0, x plus 5? What's 0 times x?
0, just get rid of the 0x because there's no.
Correct. Yes. It becomes 0. So this one's not. This one's different. Okay, you just get y equals 5. Normally, it's going to be like 2x plus 3 or something. I decided to just make this the first example. Yeah, sometimes you have an equation which is y equals a number. What shape is that line? Is it other? Good. Yes, horizontal. Vertical we're going to look at, that's when it's just x equals a number. So the answer for this one, this is the answer. Okay, remember the directions say write an equation for the line passing through this point with that slope. Your answer is an equation. So every single one of these, you should have an equation for your answer. Okay, it's crazy though, like on the worksheet, they don't have any slopes of 0, so I'm glad I covered that. Okay, so now let's look at one that's a little bit more standard. This one kind of looks like number 1 a little bit, just different numbers. So we're going to write our point out, 1, negative 3. And again, 1 is x and 3 is y. And then what would the slope be? 4/5, right? So just write m equals 4/5. Any questions about that? Labeling points, writing slope. Pretty simple. Then I'm gonna do this myself. I'm gonna write the equation every time. The more you write an equation, the more you're gonna remember it, right? Okay, so we got y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug that stuff in to this equation. So where there's a y, I'm going to replace it with negative 3. You know, that doesn't look like a y. Let me change that. That's a little bit better. Okay. Notice that the point, the value that comes second in the point ends up, you plug in first. Okay. That's why it's important to label that. Otherwise, you'll get confused. All right, then you're going to plug in the slope, which is 4/5. And then you're going to plug in x, which is 1. I'll use a color there. And there's no b to plug in because that's what you're solving for. They're never going to give you b. We've already actually done that lesson. How do you write an equation if you're given the slope and the y-intercept? It's like really easy, right? Because all you have to do is write out y equals mx plus b and then just substitute m and b, right? That's it. You don't have to do any, you don't have to solve for b. They give it to you. It's just straight substitution. All right, so now we're going to solve for b. This one's going to require a little bit more than what we just did. So first of all, what's 4/5 times 1? Good, 4/5. So we get negative 3 equals 4/5 plus b. Okay, this is a one-step equation. We've solved these before. How do you get b by itself? Nice, thank you. Subtract 4/5 from both sides. Okay, so before I do anything, I'm just going to write that side by side. So we end up with 3 minus 4/5. Thank you. I would have totally missed that. Negative 3 minus 4/5 equals b. So how do you do negative 3 minus 4/5? One is a fraction and one isn't. Yes. With the 3 is put it under 1, right? And then what he said was it needs to have a 5 on the bottom. So we're going to multiply that fraction by 5/5. That way, they have the same denominator, and then and only then can we combine the numerators. So first we got negative 3 times 5, which is negative 15. Okay, and on the bottom we just have 1 times 5, which is 5. So now we have negative 15 over 5 minus 4/5. And again, we're solving for b here. So somebody tell me, What's negative 15 over 5 minus 4 over 5? It's not negative 11. That would be if it was plus. Negative 19, right? Because you're moving further left on the number line. So that's negative 19. I think you're right. What did you say? Negative 3 and 4/5? Yeah. So there's your B. Now, actually, you can convert it to a decimal if you want. A mixed number, not so much, although that is correct. But the decimal would be negative 3.8. Okay, you could use a calculator to do that. Negative 19 over 5 gives you negative 3.8. And actually, a decimal is a little bit better because if you're talking about y-intercept and you're trying to graph it, it'd be right above 4, right? And you only know that if you convert to a decimal. Okay, so final step, we had to do a lot of work there, is to plug that back into y equals mx plus b. So here's y equals mx plus b. Again, they already gave you the slope, right, which was 4/5. So where do you know that? What we're plugging in is what we're plugging that in plus what we just solved for, which is negative 3.8. So the final answer is y equals, keep forgetting that, 4/5 x, and then what we just solved for, minus 3.8. All right, here's an extra question for you to think about. Why do you plug in the slope and the y-intercept? How come you leave y and x by itself? Okay, we already had y and x. That's true. The real reason is we want to be able to plug in any number for x and get a number back for y. So somebody might say, well, what if x is 5? What is y? All you have to do is plug in 5 for x, solve this, and it'll give you the y value. Remember, a line is a bunch of points on a graph. You can plug in any x value and you'll get a y value back. Any questions on that example? That still doesn't look that good. Let's see if I can erase that real quick. Guys, you need to put your phones away. Can't have your phone out. Thank you. Not going to call out anybody. I'm just asking you to put it away. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let's do example 3. All right. Write an equation for the line that passes through the origin and has a slope of negative 1/2. Somebody tell me, what's the origin? Thank you. So that means my x is 0 and my y is 0. Good. That's the origin. And I'm just going to write m equals a negative 1/2. Okay. Like I've done in the other examples, y equals mx plus b. And then just plug the values in. This one's easy because, you got a bunch of zeros. 0 goes in for y. Slope is negative 1/2, except for the slope, yeah. X is 0, again, put that in parentheses, equals b. Okay. Now we're going to solve for b. Well, basically, we're just going to get 0 equals 0 plus b, right? Because, negative 1/2 times 0 is 0. So b is 0. Okay, and again, I should have put this on the step. I'll type it up again. You want to simplify after writing out the equation. So once we plug this back into y equals mx plus b, we need to simplify it. Okay, and again, you're only plugging in the slope and the y-intercept. You're not plugging in anything for x. That used to confuse me too. But we only plug in for m and b because we wanted a general equation that covers all points to where you can plug anything in for x. So the slope they gave us was negative 1/2. Not going to plug in anything for x, but we just solved for b. We get 0. So for b, we're going to put a 0. But what happens when you add 0 to something? Does it change anything? No, so it's actually going to be just y equals negative 1/2 x. That's the equation, okay? So it looks like there's no b, it's 0, but you don't have to write it because it simplifies to that. So if you ever see an equation like this, where it just has a slope in the next term, then you know that the y-intercept is 0. Okay, we're going to do one more example. And it says, write an equation for the line that passes through the point -2, -3, and has an undefined slope. Okay. This one's harder. I'm going to start to do the steps, but it's not going to make a difference for here because this is an exception. What would the slope be? It says undefined, right? So there's no way I can plug that. How can you plug in something that's undefined into a formula? It doesn't make any sense, right? So what do you do if you can't plug it in? You just use which variable? Nope, keep going. Oh, I think I see what you're saying. You just leave it as m. That's interesting. No, it can't. Actually, undefined isn't a variable. Like a variable means it changes, right? Undefined means it doesn't exist at all. Okay. Who remembers undefined slope? What kind of line is that? Vertical. All right, we just said that if it has a slope of 0, it has a horizontal line, okay? So that first example we did is horizontal. A undefined slope means it's vertical, okay, and it has the form x or y equals. I'll give you a hint. The horizontal line, we ended up getting, excuse me, yeah, y equals. So what do you think about undefined? X equals. So this one's actually really easy. If it has an undefined slope, you're just going to choose the x value. The y value doesn't matter. It's kind of crazy, but the y value can be anything if it's a vertical line. So your equation for this one is just x equals -2. That is your answer. So like if you're looking at the worksheet, actually it's weird. This is almost just like example 4. Example 4 says the slope is undefined. Your equation is going to be x equals -2. You don't have to worry about the y equals -4. Same for number 8. It says the slope is undefined. It goes to the point -5, 4. Your equation is x equals -5. So go ahead and finish those problems. We're going to go over them probably at the end of class today.